I'm Kamika Dillard, certified ACC professional coach and CEO of S.A.V.E Forward Coaching. At S.A.V.E Forward Coaching, professional growth isn't one size fits all. That's why we've created 3 ways to support you. DOT for building clarity and direction, RISE for resilience and intentional action, and VISION for long-term strategy and leadership. Each program is designed to help you move through setbacks with confidence and clarity and create momentum that lasts. No pressure, no hustle, just real progress. Ready to explore what's possible? Book a free discovery call at s.a.v.e.forwardcoaching.com. Welcome to the Black Women Will Say Black Women podcast, the podcast where we support, amplify, validate, and elevate Black women always. I'm your host, Kamika Dillard, and this is our sanctuary. We have a little bit of a different format today. I'm not going to deep dive into a fail forward file or even a save strategy because this week's conversation is with what I've been trying to get to for a minute around experts and resources to bring to this audience on how to navigate during this time of not working, maybe starting your own business, figuring out mental health challenges. So we're going to do a couple of episodes that look like this. So just know that it is a deviation from our usual standard operating procedure, but it will be still full of great nuggets, takeaways for you to have. So today's guest is Vanity Jenkins. Vanity is founder of Shifted Consulting. With over 20 years of experience advising nonprofits, school leaders, and companies, she has trained more than 3,000 principals, executives, and teams nationwide. Vanity's work is rooted in culturally relevant leadership and organizational equity, and she is driven by a vision of dismantling systems of oppression so all children and communities can thrive. Welcome to the sanctuary, Vanity.
Thank you so much for having me.
We are glad that you are here. So, girl, we know that you have been through layoffs, dealt with like divisive leadership. You're building a business from scratch. When you look back on everything that you've been through, because you had to go through this before all of us were going through it, what was the biggest lesson you wish more Black women knew right away when it came to navigating this environment?
Oh, that's a great question. I think two things, if I can share two. I think one, which is really hard to do, but don't internalize the layoff as something that you inherently did wrong. Sometimes we'll get stuck in our head, we'll replay every meeting, every email, every project that we led, and try to figure out what we could have done differently or what we could have done to prevent the outcome of us being laid off. And so we can really internalize a layoff as something that we could have fixed or something that we could have changed. And I think that takes our eyes away from the systemic nature of layoffs, why companies choose to lay people off. There's decades of research that shows no matter what your financial position is, a layoff is always the worst thing that you can do, and there are other more creative ways that you can cut budgets and those types of things. And so when companies choose to lay people off, that is a choice. And it is a choice that you don't have control over. And so don't internalize your layoff as something that you did wrong, number one. And then number two, I think learning how to give ourselves grace throughout that time. A lot of time, the women that I coach are very high achievers. I also coach a lot of eldest daughters of color. And so we have, grown up with this perfectionist nature. We've always been kind of the backbone of our families. We haven't really failed before. And so we can be very harsh on ourselves around how quickly we need to find another job. Or, if we wake up one day and we're, depression is sitting in and we don't get out of the bed, we can be really harsh and mean to ourselves. And so I often tell folks to talk to yourself in the same way you would talk to your friend, so that we can just give ourselves grace and time throughout all of the up and down emotions that you go through when you're experiencing a layoff.
So it's interesting that you said like some people view it as a failure. I don't view being laid off as a failure. We don't have a choice in that. A lot of
Hmm.
what we can gather and gain from being laid off is, hey, this is another data point. I could look at it, reflect on it, dwell on it, or, I can take that information and move on. How do you
Hmm.
kind of help people to like compartmentalize in order to move on?
Yeah, one, I think you have to actually feel the emotions that come with it. You have to feel the anger, right? You have to feel the sadness. You have to feel the grief, the disappointment that comes along with being laid off. And then one of the first kind of activities that I tell people to focus on is to really think about what you're good at and what you enjoy doing and where those two things intersect, so that we can figure out what it is that you actually want to do next, whether that is applying for another role and looking for other jobs, whether that's starting a business, whether that's going back to school. But just reminding people that there are options, there are, organizations out there that are going to be aligned to your values. I also do a lot of values based coaching. So, really helping people identify their top three core values so that they can be clear on what types of environments they want to work in. And then a lot of times, a lot of women, especially in the last year, more folks have been interested in opening their own business. People have been just ready to get out of the hustle and bustle of what's happening in some of these organizations. And so helping people start that path as well.
So you've noticed that a lot of Black women are choosing to start businesses instead of going back to
Mm.
corporate. Why do you think that
Yep.
is?
I think people are tired of the politics in corporate. I think people are tired of the racism in corporate. I think people are tired of the nature of overworking that is normalized in corporate. And I think, when you see in August, it was 300 Black women have been laid off. In November, it's up to 600,000. So it went from 300,000 to 600,000, almost doubled in just a couple of months. And I think when people see those numbers and, they're in their friend groups where high achieving, very successful women have been laid off, it makes you realize how expendable people view Black women. And with all of the skills and talents that folks hold, I think they are exploring entrepreneurship as a way to make money in a way that is safer than entering the corporate atmosphere, which can just be so dehumanizing and so stressful.
So you said a keyword that I kind of want to focus on. You said safer. Let's talk about what does safety look like in entrepreneurship versus corporate America.
Sure. So a lot of times when you are in corporate, you're hearing messages around playing the game. You're hearing messages around code switching. You're hearing messages around how you need to mold yourself in order to fit the corporate culture, how you need to change your natural tendencies, the way you naturally show up as a leader in order to fit a more heteronormative, um, version of yourself, which can just be very draining, right? I've been there, I've had to do that before. And I think people are seeing entrepreneurship as a safer option because you get more choice, you get more freedom, you get to decide what clients you want to work with, you get to decide your work hours, you get to decide if you want to offer services virtual or in person. You get to choose and decide if you want to work by yourself, if you want to work with a team, if you want to collaborate with other entrepreneurs. And I think the choice is what signifies the safety, for a lot of people who are thinking about entrepreneurship in this moment.
So we talk about that type of safety, but what about the financial safety? And I would love for you to share with the
Mhm.
audience like your own financial journey that you've had to go through as an entrepreneur, because I think sometimes we are not sometimes we as people, but I see often on social media, especially the
Mhm.
glorification and instant gratification that some folks
Yep.
think comes with entrepreneurship.
Yep.
And if you
Yep.
do X, Y, and Z, you should see A, B, and C immediately. And it does not
Yep.
happen that way. So
Yep.
maybe you can share a little bit of your own financial journey as an
Yeah.
entrepreneur so that folks can maybe think through theirs.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started my business, I never meant for it to be a full-time business. I started it as kind of a side hustle project. I wanted to have some additional money for travel, and that type of thing. I got laid off for the second time in 2023 and was in one of those moments like I was just naming where I just did not have the energy to work for someone else again. And so wanted to take the time. I took time off first. I took about 3 months off to kind of figure out, was I going to apply for jobs? What was I going to do? And ultimately decided that I wanted to go into my business full time. It was definitely very, very scary. I am a single mom, and so have always thought, I will always have a full time job because I need health insurance for me and my daughter. That has been kind of my primary motivator in wanting a full time job. But at that moment, I just knew that I was not in the headspace to work for another nonprofit. And so went into my business full time. Now I'm a DEI consultant. So when I went full time in 2023, the context was very, very different around DEI. 2023, I had a pretty strong year. 2024 was my best year. I made very healthy six figures in my business that year. Most of my business is B2B, which is business to business. So I did a lot of consulting work with other nonprofits, other corporations, things like that. And then I also have always done B2C, which is business to individuals, so executive coaching, that type of thing for leaders. But that has always been a very small part of my business. And so, I was pretty cool in terms of making very close to bringing home very close to what I was bringing as a C-suite executive in a nonprofit. Now, when you are a business owner, you also have to think about things like taxes. You have to think about health insurance, and so I was making well over what I made as a full-time employee, but because of taxes and insurance, I ended up making or bringing home a little bit less than I was making as a full-time employee. Then, 2025 came in with a bang with the Trump administration outlawing essentially DEI in a lot of spaces. And so I went into the holiday break in December 2024. There were three different companies that I was supposed to sign contracts with when we got back from break in January. On January 6th, all three of those companies emailed me saying that they got rid of their equity departments and we were no longer signing contracts. And so I went from essentially a plan to be straight for the rest of the year to not bringing in any money in quarter one of 2025 and really having to shift my business plan completely in the moment because of what was happening at the national level. And so this year is I am still a full-time entrepreneur. My bills are still paid. I have been able to take care of me and my daughter. However, it has definitely been the hardest year for me in terms of business. This is my fifth year also. And so you also have to, as an entrepreneur, be really cognizant of saving and planning because it is not, you're not just going to get a check every 2 weeks like you will when you are working for someone else. If you don't bring money in, then there is no money to pay yourself, right? And so it's not as easy as folks make it seem on Instagram and Facebook, where you're just going to be a millionaire right out the gate, or you're just going to be making six figures right out of the gate. There's a lot of planning and strategy that goes into being a successful entrepreneur.
So you mentioned that the majority of your business revenue was coming from B2B, so business to business. How
hmm
did you first get those B2B clients? And then how are you navigating the change in policy, governmental policy, to
Hmm.
either get more or different type of government client, what I mean, different type of business client.
Yeah.
Share a little bit about how you're able to navigate that.
Yeah, so getting B2B clients usually is a longer runway than getting individual clients. It's a lot of relationship building. And so in the beginning, when I was first starting out, and I tell, people who I am coaching this as well, your first 1 to 5 clients usually come from people in your network. And so when you're first starting out, what I would suggest that you do is come up with a list of past colleagues, friends, family members, etc. Send them an email letting them know what you are specifically doing. Get really clear on the problem that your business solves and how your business solves that problem so that you can let people know what you're doing, how you're doing it, and how they can contact you if they want to work with you. As my business grew, I started to meet other business clients in 2 primary ways. One was LinkedIn. So I do a lot of coaching on how to use LinkedIn as a lead generator. And so I post on LinkedIn regularly, usually at least 3 times a week, sometimes four. And from that, I will often get people inboxing me asking more about my services. Now that's because I've been posting on LinkedIn for years at this point. Before I got there, when people would engage with my posts, so if they would comment, if they would like, if they would ask a question, I would then message them. We would start a conversation through messaging. And that's how I would start to build relationships with people, learn more about their organizations, really ask a lot of questions to see what are trends that they're seeing at their specific job. Why did what I posted resonate? To see if the solutions or the problems that I solve would be helpful for them. So that's one primary way that I got those B2B clients. Another way is through RFPs, so requests for proposals. And so sometimes you'll see people post those on LinkedIn. I'm also a part of a community called Catalyst, where they regularly post different RFPs for organizations. And once those are posted, you can submit a proposal for how you would support that organization. And then the organization gets to decide if they want to interview you, if they want to work with you, et cetera.
Outside of LinkedIn, social media, etc., how do you go about growing your clientele?
Yeah, so I also I live in South Carolina, so I go to different networking opportunities here in South Carolina. I'm involved in the Chamber of Commerce, so they have something for entrepreneurs there. Our public libraries also do a lot with entrepreneurs. I go there. Now I'm an introvert, so there are probably lots more things that I could be doing for the in-person. I try to push myself to do at least 4 things a month. So I usually try to make it once a week. And in those spaces, you're connecting with people, you're having your business cards ready, you have your elevator pitch, so that you can tell people about what you do and how you support them. And that is another way to just continue to generate clients and help people know and understand about your business. Another thing that was hard for me as an introvert is sometimes, you think I have posted about this thing 20 times, right? Everybody knows what I do, but everybody doesn't know what you do. And I tell my clients now all the time that you are not the main character in everyone else's story. So even if it feels like you have talked about something at length, people forget, right? And so I also have a regular cadence of people that I check back in with, so former colleagues, past clients. And I usually check in with people once a quarter just to see if anything is new at their organization, if there's additional support that they need. And sometimes I've had people who are pretty close friends, and I'll reach back out to them and share what I'm doing. And they're like, oh, girl, I forgot you did that. Let's schedule a call so that we can talk about, how to bring this to my organization. And so just making sure that you are the ambassador for your business is something that is really important. I think I missed one of your other questions about how I have shifted now from the B2B because of the political landscape.
Yeah.
And so I have primarily this year, I've been more B2C. so supporting individuals. I still do work with organizations, but instead of it being specifically around DEI, it's more around organizational culture. Now, when I support organizational culture, I'm still asking questions around equity. I'm still asking, what employees or what demographics are having the worst experience at the organization, those types of things. So I'm still doing DEI work, but under the banner of culture because politics have shifted the way people use language, unfortunately. But I have also done a lot more executive coaching for individuals on that B2C side, which was not a primary part of my business in the past.
So you said something I think that people miss out on. You it sounds like you have a very powerful follow-up, which I also have a very great follow-up. And maybe that's why I should have always been an entrepreneur because people who follow up, you'll do really well in this realm.
Yep.
What is your system for ensuring that things like that don't fall through the cracks where, you either have a cadence, like walk us through your tool systems and processes for managing through some of these relationships that you want to maintain.
Yeah, so I have a huge Google sheet. So that initial kind of outreach that I talked about, where I tell people to think about your former colleagues, former bosses, people you manage, family, friends, etc. I have a list of. I'm trying to get it to 150. It's at about 98 people now, and I kind of have them sectioned off into those different categories. So friends, family, former clients, former colleagues, etc. And then I will go through that list the first week of every quarter. And I will notate kind of, did I talk to this person this quarter? I also use my Calendly to remind me because sometimes I'll forget who I talked to. But with Calendly, you can run a report of all of the meetings that you had, and you can do that monthly or quarterly. So I'll look at that report and analyze it against my own memory to see who I've talked to, how long it's been since I've talked to people, and then I'll just send a follow up. Hey, the last time we talked about XYZ, this is where your organization was. Would love to reconnect, see how things are going, something kind of friendly. My goal is always to get people on a call because on a call, you can learn more about what's happening. And sometimes, right, I also tell people because sometimes folks are afraid of entrepreneurship because they don't want to be like um, the creepy car salesman who's just scamming people, right? And so, what I remind people is you are actually solving a problem, right? If you get really clear on your niche and what you do, you're going to be clear on what problem you solve and how you solve it. And so, sometimes when I reconnect with people, they are looking for someone who can help them revamp their fundraising strategy, right? Now, that's something I've done before. I've been an executive director, I've had to fundraise. I don't like doing it. And so when people are telling me about those issues, I'm like, I've been there before. I have struggled with that. Here are some people that I can recommend who are really experts in that field, and I will recommend people to them. But I don't take every client or every problem because that will also drain me. And I think that's another part of the freedom, right? Like I could take every client, but that's not going to be the best use of my time or my energy. And so the connections or those follow-ups are really genuine follow-ups. I want to hear how you're doing. I want to know what's going on in your organization. I want to know what problems or what things are keeping you up at night. Because if there is a way that I can support you, I want to. If there's not, I want to connect you with people who can.
I think there's a miss often, especially with new entrepreneurs, around cultivating a network of like minded individuals who are either doing the work that you're doing, who are either doing something similar, cross functionally, et cetera, so that you don't have to do this alone.
Hmm.
Entrepreneurship does not equate to working on things by yourself. Like,
Right,
no,
right.
no, yes, you're an entrepreneur. You can build a team, you can build a business, you can build a practice, but it's
Yep,
also important that you're building your network because you want to keep things amongst like the entrepreneur community is how I'm
yep.
looking at it. Like, and I'm similar in the same way. Like whenever with my test prep business, particularly, when my students, because I tutor high school students, ACT, SAT, PSAT, but when they get to college and they're like, hey, I'm gonna take the LSAT, and I'm like, well, And let me tell you who I use for my LSAT prep, which is my friend Matt. And I send clients over to him, and he gives them a discount. I think it's like super important that we think about like that network is even like you need it more as an
Yep.
entrepreneur than I feel like you need it in dealing with corporate.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
what is a tool or practice that you swear by that you think more people should be tapping into?
That's a good question.
I always ask them.
Um,
It's the coach in me.
so I use ClickUp for kind of my organization, like generally. I also have adult diagnosed ADHD. And so I know if the task is not written down somewhere for me, I'm going to forget it. And so ClickUp is where I keep my client surveys. I keep my anytime someone signs up for a coaching session, for example, they automatically get sent info from ClickUp so they can put their information. I send all my clients a gift so they can put their name, address in there. They immediately get a survey to take that gives me some background information on them. And then I also use ClickUp to kind of roll up data in terms of who am I talking to? My the Google sheet that I talked about, that's in ClickUp, so I can figure out who I've talked to, what quarter, when, did I follow up? Did the conversation kind of go silent? Do I need to re-engage? Those types of things. And then when I'm working with other people, to your point, because I do collaborate with a lot of entrepreneurs as well, you can also send people tasks. And so if you don't give me a task, I know I'm going to forget. And so I use ClickUp to put all of my tasks in there. And that has been really helpful for me as an entrepreneur, just to kind of have an understanding of all of the different things I need to do. That's another thing that I think people have to understand about entrepreneurship. You go from working with a lot of different people that are experts in a specific job function to wearing the marketing hat, the CEO hat, the client delivery person hat, right? And so I also like to make sure that I am at the end of the week that I am spending time on things that are ultimately going to generate business and generate revenue for me. And so I'm able to look at that through ClickUp. It can track your time and where you've spent your time. And so I like to have my time either directly on my client services or on things that are going to generate revenue and income. So I would definitely say ClickUp. And then for I was thinking of another one. I think another system that is important when you are laid off in particular is to really understand, and this isn't a system necessarily, but I think it's important for people to understand right after you're laid off to figure out where you are financially. So to look at your severance if you were given one, to look at your savings if you have one, and figure out when do you have to have new income coming in so that you really clearly understand your runway. Sometimes we'll get a severance check and we're feeling all those feelings and we're not feeling great, so we're just buying and shopping, and then we look up and it's like I need money tomorrow, right? And so before getting to that position, being really strategic and understanding where you are. When I was laid off, I would still pay myself every 2 weeks from my savings, like what I would bring home, so that I wasn't just out spending spending money and not having anything. And that's why I was able to take off 3 months and kind of just decide what I wanted to do, because I had a savings where I was still able to pay my bills and take care of myself, etc. If I hadn't have looked at my financial outcome, I could have just been spending my savings down, right, and had no plan. And so I think it's really important for us to fight through any fear that we might have around money and get really granular so that we understand what possibilities we have. If you can take off a month and do nothing, if you need to be looking for a job immediately, or if you need to be looking for contract work immediately, so that you're clear on what options you actually have.
That is great advice. I really appreciate you kind of reiterating the need for financial like solvency, long-term outlook, long-term planning when it comes to it. If you can think through like all these black women, we've all, they've been impacted. Maybe by the time this air, we might be up to almost a million, who knows? If we get this right, if black women really lock arms after all these layoffs happen, what does the future look like to you?
That is a beautiful question. I think if we are able to lock arms and truly support one another in this moment, um, we will be in a position where we don't have to go back to corporate, number one, where we have figured out ways to sustain each other with each other, and where Black women have always been, the fastest growing folks in terms of degrees obtained, right? We've been the fastest growing in terms of entrepreneurship even before the layoffs. However, our businesses usually earn significantly less than other
Yep,
people. But if we lock arms in this moment and are intentionally spending money with each other and collaborating with each other and taking on projects with each other, I think we can knock out those statistics around, what Black women earn to in comparison to other women, what we earn in comparison to white women, and what we earn in comparison to men more broadly. I think that we can have our own Harlem Renaissance in this moment, and truly be able to, if we get it right, I think 5 years from now we can have obtained wealth from us. We can build each other up and have generated wealth among Black women to where we don't need anybody else anymore, right? We don't need to worry about the fact that people aren't, venture capitalists aren't funding Black women owned businesses, because we'll have the money and the capital to fund them ourselves. We won't have to worry about layoffs in the way that we did this year, because there will be so many businesses that are supporting and hiring other Black women that we're doing our own thing. And so I think now is an opportunity for us to think and really center abundance and get out of that scarcity of, I got to just take care of myself, and really think about community in an intentional way so that we can build and create something for us.
absolutely. I love the idea of a Harlem Renaissance type moment post this chaos that we're living in, where
Yeah.
we're just thriving. Now my fear is that we have this, our own neighborhood, our own Wall Street, our own Greenwood, whatever that looks like, and once again we're minding our own business and people come and
Yep.
bother us. Okay, that is my
Yep.
fear.
Yep.
I'm working through that. So to close it all out, tell the people where they can find you. I know that when we talk, you wanted to extend out some as to the community. You want to offer some things to this community. So let them know, Vanity.
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Vanity Jenkins there. And then I'm also on Instagram and Facebook at Shifted, SHIFTED Consulting. You can find me in either of those places on Instagram and Facebook. I have been giving out pro bono coaching to Black women who have been laid off since July. And so that's two free 30-minute sessions if you're interested in that. Again, you can find me and message me on LinkedIn or on Instagram and Facebook. I would be happy to extend that to anybody who listens to this podcast, and your calls can be focused on career coaching, or they can be focused on business development. If you know you want to start a business, I'd be happy to support you in either of those. And then as far as asks, like we were just talking about, I think we just need to lock arms and support people. And so the work that I do is really centered in supporting organizations in terms of their culture. I do a lot of work with HR teams. I do a lot of work with coaching leadership teams and helping organizations with their strategic planning. And so, if you know any organizations looking for those types of services, or if you know any women looking for executive coaching, I would be very, very grateful for you to share my information. And, like you said, we got to lock arms in this moment and create the reality where we are all thriving. So I appreciate everything that you're doing with this podcast as well.
Thank you so much. So, I think it's just super fitting that we had you on as one of our first resource guests because I think that where people are missing out on is the fact that you can do so much within this community that you can continue to strive. And like you said, like there's so much abundance around us. We don't have to have a scarcity mindset. We don't have to have this crabs in a barrel type mindset. Like we can really help each other, like build each other up during this time. So thanks for coming to the sanctuary today, Vanity.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So, Vanity already kind of recapped what a lot of SAVE is about, or, supporting, amplify, validate, elevating, which is what I really want Black women to focus on. And, let's just really focus on the S this week: support, support, support. There's so many people out here who need it, especially in 2026, as they're trying to navigate this very challenging environment. We're getting hit with so many different, challenges from the left, from the right. So it's super important that you support your people during this time. So, as always, like, subscribe, and follow Black Women Will Say Black Women. We're on all major podcast platforms. Go on YouTube, please like on YouTube, make a comment. You can follow me on Instagram at Kamika T. Dillard. I'm on TikTok at Miss KT Dillard. As always, support, amplify, validate, elevate. That is how we save each other. And never forget that Black women will save Black women. I'm your host, Kamika Dillard. Have a good day.